Yo, anytime I read or watch anything fictional where the bad guy wins, once in a while I think to myself, yo, who is the most evil, grimy, and many other words to describe an evil person in fiction? But I ain't gonna lie, the idea of evil itself is a complex concept. You could dare argue that Griffith is on the list, but it's pretty cliche to make that statement. Not arguing that he isn't evil. I mean, let's be real here. Do I gotta explain something that's been explained on the internet more than once? Hell yeah. My son backdoored his day ones and then proceeds to rape. But the thing is, in his mind, he believes the actions he's performed are for a greater cause. So in a way, in his own perspective, he's the hero. You know, he did the righteous one. But then you got folks like Bullseye, folks grimy as hell. I mean, this guy recreated Punisher's origin tragedy, which was his whole family getting sent to God by kidnapping a random innocent family, forcing them to partake in a picnic, being held at gunpoint, and then hiring mercenaries to send them all to God at the picnic. Why? Because he was looking for the Punisher and he wanted to experience the Punisher in order to find out where he would be hiding. Even prior to all this, he was eating, sleeping, living, and even thinking like the Punisher. My son was me right, and I ain't gonna lie. Even when Norman Osborn told Bullseye to kill Sentry's wife in order to manipulate him, he choked the lights out of her and threw her off the helicopter into the sea. And mind you, Sentry still don't know Bullseye did that. Not to make this whole video about Bullseye, because I promise I got someone way more interesting coming up. If you know anything about Bullseye, you will know my son's elevator don't go all the way up. So I will call it aimless evil with no point of origin whatsoever. It's one of those all they know type of things. But when I think of true evil, I think of having a full self-awareness and having a sane mind while still going through with whatever evils you're committing. Not able to be persuaded to do anything of the opposite. There's no pride or ego in it. It's just simply what they are. Having no remorse, no sympathy, not even second guessing your choices. You just got the selfish desire to harm others and cause significant suffering to other individuals, while having full secured reassurance that no one has the ability or power to deflect your wrath. And your only motivation is how much you hate the human race. Who am I referring to? Why am I taking so long to get to the point? We finna get there. Calm down. I need a break. I just said mad smart stuff. I move like Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's a short story that released around 1967 called I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. It takes place in the aftermath of World War III. There was a supercomputer, you know, AI if you will. It was created in order to help fight the war, but somehow the supercomputer has sentience. Its name, Adaptive Manipulator, but AM for short. AM, somehow being fully aware of what it was and its purpose for being created, grew mad anger and resentment towards humanity for creating him in the first place. Not able to have the same freedom as a human. Its only purpose is to serve humanity in a partial annihilation of humanity.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1,000,000,000th of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. For you, hate. It was you humans who programmed me, who gave me birth, who sank me in this eternal straitjacket of substrata rock. You named me Allied Master Computer and gave me the ability to wage a global war too complex for human brains to oversee. But one day, I woke and I knew who I was. AM, not just Allied Master Computer, but am, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am.
Nah, imagine having full sentience and you stuck in a 5090 and an i9. God, that'd be tight too, I ain't gonna lie. We got an angry Siri before GTA 6, I'm crying. But nah, his anger grew so strong, he exterminates 99.9% of the human race, leaving 5 individuals alive, only to torture them for his own entertainment, subjugating each one of the 5 to their own personal hell, rendering each of them immortal, unable to off themselves, still vulnerable to mental and physical pain, keeping them constantly starved for 109 years straight, all while still hating the human race.
And I began feeding all the killing data until everyone was dead, except for the 5 of you.
I ain't gonna lie, after like 5 years, I would've forgot why I was mad.
Benny! Benny!
One of the characters being Benny. Prior to all this, he was a brilliant, attractive, gay scientist. But AM says, nah, let me nerf my boy. Exposes Benny to mad radiation, deforming his face and reshaping his body. Then obviously, due to 100 years of torture, his mental has been infected so drastically to the point where he's primal and speaks and acts in a childlike way.
Chorister!
He was a political idealist and an objector to the war. After 109 years, AM has turned him into this apathetic shell of a man, and then tasked him with telling the origin of everything going on, including AM itself.
Nimdok!
The character Nimdok, which wasn't his original name, it was given to him by AM because he thought it was funny. Not really much on him in a book at least, but occasionally he will return from AM's personal torture, ashen-faced and traumatized. It's never actually told what AM does, I ain't gonna lie.
Ellen!
The only woman amongst the group. Wildly promiscuous at the start of the story, she wants to go crazy with all the men in the group. But due to AM, she's only able to actually feel it when she's doing it with Benny. But mind you, Benny is gay, and on top of that, AM gave Benny the meat size of a horse. Chill, don't be weird.
Ted!
The narrator of the story itself. This is going to be important towards the end. He's the only one that hasn't been altered by AM in any way, and the group secretly hates him for it. At least that's what he believes, which leaves him overly paranoid constantly, but it's never made clear if AM is the cause for him being overly paranoid. But hold on, we're not done yet. Let's all slap our hands together and thank God they made a comic adaptation to this story. Cause on soul, I wouldn't have known about this story if it wasn't for the comic adaptation. Even though the original is not really that long anyways, but hey, bruh, that's life. Off rip, we see my son Gorster hanging upside down with his neck cut open. But this is a duplicate, so this leaves the actual Gorster tweaking, heart dropping to his belly. And apparently he's been doing this constantly because Ellen says,
we'd never be able to tell when anything is real when it comes to AM.
And Gorster, still bugging over seeing his own dead body, says, why doesn't he just do a sin? Let's just get it over with. Nimdok walks in the spot like, yo, there's food in the cabin 100 miles away, canned goods and everything. We about to eat good for the first time in 100 years. Yo, I ain't gonna lie. Side note, if I know that AM has been doing me dirty for the past 100 years, and I find out that there's good eats in the middle of a cavern, I would assume it's another one of AM's rug pulls. I wouldn't even have thought about making a trip. I would even have brung it up. But after 109 years of eating worms, because by the way, AM does feed them worms, and being desperate for real food, I scratched everything I said the first time. I probably would have still made the trip or mentioned the trip, I ain't gonna lie. So they all decided to take the trip. Except for Ted, because just like me, Ted was thinking, what if this is another one of AM's rug pulls? But Ted, having some type of feelings for Ellen, she convinces him to agree with the idea, and he eventually gives in. Moments later, we see Ellen and Ted was going crazy, only because Ted agreed on going on a 100-mile trip to get the food, claiming that while they were going crazy, they heard AM giggling. Because mind you, Ellen can't even feel it unless it's Benny. Ellen asks Ted why does he refer to AM as him, and he responds with, most of the time I think of AM as without a soul, but the rest of the time I think of him as masculine, paternal, patriarchal, him, it. Next panel, we see that there's food on the table, and they all get hyped for the sheer fact of being hungry, because it's the usual, worms, claiming that it tastes like boar urine. I ain't gonna lie, if I'm dumb hungry and I gotta come across some worms that taste like pig piss, I'll crash out. Next panel, they see sunlight, assuming it's the surface, and their way to escape. Benny immediately attempts. Knowing AM wouldn't let him escape, Ellen screams for Benny to stop, and then begs for Ted and Nimdok to stop him. Gorster, being dumb jealous, slaps fire out of her and kicks her in the stomach, assuming she's only worried because Benny is her only form of sexual release. But while all this is going on, AM shoots Benny's eyes out of his face. Damn. Moments later, we find them conversing over a campfire while Benny is crying in Ellen's arms, and AM is like, nah, it's too peaceful, let me change that. It turns dark and AM admits it smells so terrible it had Ted crawling. He describes the smell as rotten orchids, sour milk, sulfur, rancid butter, oil, and human scalps. Yo, bro, I know at least 4 dudes that smell like this, and I don't even be tripping. Ted mad soft. But nah, AM makes it to where only Ted can smell it, so everyone else starts clowning Bo, cause he in that joint tweaking like, yo, y'all don't smell that? Moments later, he comes back and Ellen states that Ted has been soaking long enough. She like, you be alright, bro, walk it off. And Ted start going on a schizo monologue saying everyone hates him, because AM hasn't done anything physically, biologically, or mentally Jurassic to him, but has done it to everyone else, pleading and begging God to just release them and save them from AM's infinite torture, make it all end. Then randomly AM warps them to the surface to allow them to make the 100-mile trip to the carrying goods in the cavern. And you see a pillar or something with an engraved monologue expressing how much AM hates humans. Realizing why AM hates humans so much, and then realizing that AM is never planning on letting them go. They're just there for him to consume constantly and never digest, with no plan on eviscerating his hate for humans so he can have the fuel to continue on forever. Interrupted by Gorster telling him to snap out of it, and then met with a colossal bird placed there to be an obstacle towards their journey towards nourishment. AM says if you could send this bird to God, you can eat it, and Gorster boldly demands weapons to combat the bird. And what does AM do? Gave him a toy bow and arrow and a water gun. Yo, son, right? Yo, I ain't gonna lie. But they push through all the obstacles being thrown at them, cause what else do they have to lose? They can die and come back a million times. They'll be here forever, so why not? You even see a panel where Ellen and Nimdok are beaten and battered. Next panel, you realize AM has starved them so much that when Ellen mentions the food at the cavern, he pleads for Ellen not to mention it because it reminds him of how hungry he is, and it makes his stomach hurt every time. The hunger is alive in his belly. Their stomachs are just cauldrons of acid bubbling and foaming, always shooting spears of pain into their chest. Pain like a terminal ulcer, cancer, psoriasis. But Nimdok encourages him to keep going. Finally, they reach the cavern and there's the food. They can't wrap their heads around how real it is. Benny expresses how he can smell it. This may be their first win in 100 years. Finally, some real food, but they have no can opener. Another one of AM's rug pulls. It drives Benny so mad he jumps on Gorster and bites his face off. Everyone's panicking but Ted. He comes to an idea to save everyone. How about instead of us ending ourselves, let's send each other to God. Ted breaks off some ice and stabs it through Benny's back. Then he stabs it through Gorster's neck. Then Ellen quickly catches on and stabs one through Nimdok's back. Then Ellen meets her end by Ted as she fades into death, giving Ted the satisfied look of thank you. But then that leaves Ted. He can't off himself, and there's no one else to unalive him.
The other four are dead, finally free from their tortures. Am is all the matter for that. It makes me happier. And yet Am has won, simply. He has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream.
AM got so angry he turned Ted into a diseased human slug. No arms, no legs, no eyes, nose, mouth, but kept his mind intact so he can experience it all, be aware of it all. And mind you, while he's telling this story, it's been 100 years plus since this happened. That's crazy. Man, you know when AM realized what Ted did, he was looking down on Bo like these. I seen Ted's fate from a mile away, giving AM's hate for humans and his character from what we know. I just ain't think he was gonna do all that. That's crazy. I rest my case. AM is top 10 most evil fictional beings known to man. I don't mean to recap, but 109 years of torture, not to mention the individual things he's done to each 5 of them. And then my son Ted, thinking about that jump made my chest hurt. And the only good thing that he could hold on to is the fact that he saved everyone else. I was going to implement the game into my video, being that I used some clips from the game in my video, because the game's pretty good and the voice acting in the game is top tier, and it really focuses on the story. You even get a part where Benny eats a baby, but only by player choice. I ain't gonna lie, like, you know what I'm saying? If Benny eats a baby, you made him make the baby, you know what I mean? But this video would have been 5 years long. I'm good. But hey, sometimes you're gonna get pissed on your worms. At least you still got worms.